Appetite for Life is underwritten by the Sazerac Company, makers of fine spirits including Sazerac Rye Whiskey, Herb Saint, and Peychaud's Bitters. Sazerac, the one and only New Orleans original. More information can be found at sazerac.com. Additional support comes from Bourbon House, home of the Redfish on the Half Shell and Bourbon Milk, located 1 block off Canal on Bourbon Street, serving premium Gulf oysters, raw or charbroiled. More information can be found at bourbonhouse.com.
Welcome again to Appetite for Life. I'm Tim McNally. Thank you for being with us. Tonight, a little something different. We won't stray too far from our mission to bring to you stories and places that celebrate life in New Orleans. But we will be focusing on just one part of town and on just one man who was here only a short while, almost 150 years ago, yet he continues to make his presence felt in New Orleans and around the world. One of the founders of the Impressionistic school of painting, Edgar Degas, was born in Paris, France, to a Creole mother. His father was a banker in Paris. His maternal grandfather, Germain Mousson, was born in Port-au-Prince, Haiti, and was a Creole. Degas, early in his life, showed real talent for fine art and painting. After serving as a soldier in the Franco-Prussian War in 1870 to 1872, Degas came to New Orleans to be with his Creole family, including his brother René and a number of other cousins. While in New Orleans, Edgar Degas began to develop a contemporary painting style unseen in the art world to this time. One of his most important works, A Cotton Office in New Orleans, completed in 1873, is notable for two reasons. Besides being an excellent rendering, the seated man reading the newspaper, a daily Picayune, was actually the great-grandfather of the man who was to become, coincidentally, the publisher of the Times-Picayune 100 years later. And this is the only painting by Edgar Degas purchased during his lifetime by a museum, one located in Pau, France. The time that Degas spent in New Orleans, 5 months in 1872 and 1873, were difficult for the Mousson family. They were fighting the harsh terms of the Reconstruction government and took part in the riots of that period. Degas was quite close to his family in New Orleans, even proclaimed himself a true son of Louisiana, but all the turmoil of the time was not his fight. Yet most Degas historians agree that his time in New Orleans was significant to his development as an artist. He came to despise the term Impressionist, preferring to be known as a realist. The works of Edgar Degas completed in New Orleans during this period, mostly portraits of his family members, were all the rage in Paris. They cleared the way for his return to the city of his birth as a true innovator. He was easily accepted by Monet and the other Impressionists. Later in life, when Degas' friend Paul Gauguin noted that Gauguin was on the verge of being done with civilization and he wanted to go somewhere exotic, Degas recommended New Orleans. Gauguin instead chose Tahiti. Who's to say which one was more exotic to a Parisian? Tonight, we are noting the 100th anniversary of the death of Edgar Degas in 1917. With a visit to the house of Degas' relative, we know it ourselves as Degas House. Then we are heading up Esplanade Avenue toward Bayou St. John for a visit to New Orleans' most celebrated French restaurant, Café Degas. It's all coming your way in just a moment on Appetite for Life. Welcome back to Appetite for Life. Thank you for being with us. You're in for a rare treat because we're going to blend in a history of New Orleans, a history of a great man who lived here that's living right now in our neighborhood. We've got David Villarubia here, the proprietor of Degas House on Esplanade. Could there be a more beautiful setting in all the city, David?
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
This is great. Degas House goes back to beyond the Civil War. These structures were here, but they gained notoriety in the days after the war.
Correct. 1872 and 1873 is when Degas was here visiting his Creole maternal family who were then living in the house.
Edgar Degas was in the vanguard of the Impressionistic movement in France. He was of Creole heritage, and the Creoles lived in this home.
Correct. There were 18 family members that lived here, all part of his maternal family, and that included his brothers, 3 female cousins who were living here with their father, Michel Musson, and then 10 children who were the offspring of the various cousins.
This was such an important part of New Orleans history, David. For so long, it was left ignored. When did you get involved with this project?
In 1993, the house had a for sale sign on it, and it was really in very poor condition. But there was the historic marker outside that's still out there now. It had been placed in about 1975. So the house had been abandoned and it was in very poor condition. So I was lucky enough to find it and figure out over time with the best advisors possible what I should do with it.
What happens here? What did you do with it?
Well, this is fashioned after the museum houses in Paris, and some of the functions that the museum houses perform in Europe, we are now doing here. So that includes guided tours of the house, all documented, endorsed by the French government, and our tour guides, 3 of the tour guides are the great-grandnieces of Edgar Degas. So the hallmark of what we do is really the history and the backdrop of what actually happened here. So, but we also, besides tours, we also do weddings and corporate events here, meetings, and we also have a historic inn with 9 rooms and suites in between the 2 houses.
So it must be magnificent to have a wedding here and then everybody just stays and parties and then just goes to bed.
Well,
Eventually.
Eventually. The brides really like the house, and I think part of that is, of course, the connection with Degas, and perhaps they were ballet dancers at some point in time in their past, and they identify with the artist's work.
Which is a prime subject of many of his works, including his sculptures.
Absolutely. So I think they identify with the fact that this is the only house of Degas in the world. So it's a unique venue that they can't do anywhere else. So it gives us great opportunity to basically capitalize on having such an interior space combined with an exterior space, which is the courtyard that sits between the 2 buildings. But we want our guests to come here and relax and enjoy it. Enjoy the house, enjoy the space, and enjoy the historic backdrop. As Degas was living here, of course, you know, they drank red wine in the house, and that is something that you don't see in a lot of museums. But as a museum house, and knowing that this was a home for an extended family, we want people to come in and enjoy it in the same ways that the family did at the time that Degas was here. Family lived here for 10 years, and so with Degas, as he arrived, he had not painted for several years, so he immediately went to work and started to paint again, and he was concerned about his future. His eyesight was slipping, and he was only 38, so he started painting family portraits. This is what he began with. So he completed 18 paintings here in the house, 4 drawings, and 5 letters that survived that really give us great insight into what he was thinking and feeling and doing here in the house. But the reality happened, the reality of what the dream was of these young revolutionary painters who ended up going into the Franco-Prussian War, seeing a lot of bloodshed, a lot of action. They lost Frederick Bazille in battle, And then the French.
Degas was in the army, wasn't he?
He was in the National Guard. He
Yeah.
fought with Basile and Manet, and they saw a lot of action. And in the end, Paris was surrendered anyway. So, you know, what was it all about? And I think that led to his post-traumatic stress, which is what we believe he had when he came here. He was very depressed and very internal. His girlfriend had ditched him, married somebody else.
And we were just coming off the Civil War. We were in Reconstruction. It wasn't exactly a picnic.
Right, it wasn't a garden spot for him to come to.
Right.
But he loved his family, and he wanted to reunite with his brothers, who were by then living here. And he knew two of his cousins from the Civil War when they left. They just evacuated along with many other ladies under Butler's decree. Women of means left. So they went and lived in Paris and in Bourg-en-Bresse with the family over there. So he wanted to reunite with his cousin Estelle and Desiree. And so this gave him a fresh break from the problems in Paris. But Reconstruction was not as painful as what they were going through in Paris.
There was definitely war. Obviously, David, you're such a great historian and you tell such a great story. So people come here to Degas House on Esplanade and they are immersed in history, but then we have the other pleasures of New Orleans, which is a B&B and a place to have a drink and a place to have a meal, and you've just started a Sunday brunch.
Correct. The brunch is by popular demand. Basically, we do a breakfast for people staying in the inn, gourmet Creole breakfast every day, and then people coming for the early tour have wanted to take part in the breakfast. Now we have outsiders coming into the breakfast. So on Sunday, which is more of an open day for us, we have embarked on an expanded breakfast, which is going to include lunch, and it'll go through 2 o'clock in the afternoon or so. So that it's basically, there's more food options, which includes, of course, lunch options. And we want local people to be able to come in. But this gives an option to locals to be able to come in, see what we're doing, stay on top of the progress made at Degas House, have some food and drink, mimosas, Bloody Marys, it's champagne, you know, so they can relax in the garden overlooking Esplanade. There's a lot of activity in Esplanade. It's very interesting. Great people watching. Or they can sit in the more formal area, like where we are now, and have breakfast inside. And the tour also is happening during that period. So there's a lot of facts that they pick up from the tour without necessarily being on the tour. So teasers. And so that's sort of another backdrop, much as...
Or they don't have to participate. They just come here and have brunch.
Exactly.
Yeah, just
Yes.
relax and take it easy. So David, the activities don't end at having an inn and having a beautiful place to come and have a drink or have breakfast or Sunday brunch. You have classes also that help people to immerse into the world of art.
One of our great-grandnieces, who is also a docent, tour guide, and is here frequently, is also an artist. So she has drawing classes and she has painting classes. Generally, for groups anytime, we have to pre-schedule that, and then generally there's a food option that comes with that, and along with, of course, good wines and beverages. So that's worked pretty well for us. To get people in the house to put them in the environment where they're working from the same light that Degas worked from, and this is really important to the beginning artist, and Maisie is her name, Maisie Moyer, leads them through and tries to make it easy for them. We also see that it's very good for corporate outings, ladies' day types of things, that they want to come in as a group and have some wine. It's a team building exercise as well. So it's been very well received, and we're very proud of the work that Maisie's been able to do.
I love the fact that even after Degas left, he always admired himself as a child of Louisiana.
Yes, and he said that he was almost a child of Louisiana, and almost a son of Louisiana, is how he puts it. And so The paintings that he painted here of his family went back to France. And even as Michel Musson was asking him, begging him to send the portrait of Mathilde, Michel Musson's daughter, Degas' cousin, and she died in 1878. So Michel Musson wanted that, and Degas basically put him off with promises. And all of the paintings of his family he kept with him, and they were there until his death. They were discovered at his death. So he was very close to his family.
David Villarubia. David, thank you very much for being with us today. It's
Tim.
been a pleasure to talk to you, and thank you for sharing the history. This is fascinating stuff, and it's a piece of New Orleans that we don't think about much.
Well, thanks for coming out and visiting with us.
I'm excited to be here, always am. Tim McNally on Appetite for Life. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Appetite for Life. Thank you for being with us. Kind of a rainy day, but that isn't going to influence us at all. We're glad you're here. We're with Jacques Soulas, Café Degas on Esplanade. Jacques, I love your restaurant so much.
Thank you. 31 years.
Is it really? 31 years.
We've been here.
It's an institution.
Yes. Well, I don't know about that, but yeah, it's been a long time.
Do New Orleanians really get French food? Because I know that you serve French food.
We do. I think they do. I think they get. You know about New Orleans, what's funny to see is that we are seeing generations of people that have come here over the years, including the grandparents, the parents, and now the children and the grandchildren in some occasions. It's been that long of a ride. And you know, people come for special occasions, of course, you know, the big Mother's Day or Easter, but we see all the generation of people that have come here over the years.
Yeah, one of the great things about being a restaurateur, among other bad things, which are it's a tough business, isn't it?
It is. It's all details, constantly watching everything.
What was the genesis of this project? What made you think that you'd like to have your own spot?
I think it was more an opportunity than anything else. This had been already open as a restaurant for only 6 to 8 months by a friend of ours who didn't want to keep it going. And he offered it to the 4 of us. We got a little group together, and the 4 of us decided to give it a shot. We transformed it. We made it, enlarged the kitchen. We went for a full French menu and some special. And we kept that culture ever since the beginning. A simple, classic French menu with deli specials that showcase our Louisiana goods, all our Louisiana foods. And so this has been our way of doing it since day one.
You know, it is French, but it's not formal. It's not haughty. It's a very approachable French.
It is. So that was that's part of our success, is when we opened, French meant maître d'hôtel, white tablecloth, linen, crystal, expensive meals that you can only afford to take once in a while. So we decided to do it more like the French bistro style that I grew up with in France, where you could go to these little cafes, even the little bar tabac, which has the lunch specials. Usually 1 or 2 dishes are being served, and then everybody sits at one table oftentimes, and the meals are delicious but simply prepared, and they don't cost a fortune. So that's kind of where we were trying to do. And so we took the starch out of dining in French.
Oh, I love that expression.
Yes.
I think you've done that. Now, your dining room is fully open year-round, and I don't mean in terms of being available. I'm talking about the sides. You don't have walls.
We have no walls, and it's been like this since day one.
You have a tree.
We have a tree. We still kept it. So it turns out there used to be 2 trees. We didn't know that, and one of the tree fell over with Katrina, but one of them remained behind, and so we keep it trimmed, and we keep it healthy. So that tree is still there. It's a pecan tree, by the way.
It's a pecan?
Yeah, it's a pecan tree. We all think it's an oak. It's not. It's a pecan tree.
So they drop out of the tree from time to time?
Yes, and the squirrels love it because they get well fed.
What's the French word for squirrel?
Écureuil.
Écureuil.
Les écureuils.
And it's a wooden floor. It's raised,
Yes.
and so it feels approachable. It's again, I never feel like somebody's looking down on me here. It's always we're equal.
Yeah, it's a simple little deck, and then with the panels, you know, when we first opened, over the time, we've added certain convenience features such as air conditioning and heat. In the beginning, and for nearly 10 years, this restaurant was open without AC.
Really?
And in winter, we had these infrared heaters. So in the winter, your head would burn and your feet were frozen all at the same time. And of course, we had no AC, so we had to live with it for a long time. But eventually, when we purchased the property once and for all, we were able to add all these conveniences. And now it's a very comfortable place.
Well, now you've got this small little bar, which I find very appealing and very French.
It seats 4 people.
Yeah. But it's so
people.
great.
That's
Well, we're
all
out
you
here
get.
on your deck, on the back deck. Usually this is taken up with diners back here.
Nowadays we do, yeah. We have more diners. In fact, we have plans on adding more greens. Part of the charm of this restaurant, obviously, is that over the years we've been planting trees on this entire venue. If you looked at it, if you had photos from the 80s, this area was barren of trees, and we've planted virtually every tree on the street, on this block at least. And I think it's part of the charm. It's got that jungle, lush feeling.
Yes.
And it adds to the charm and the feel of the restaurant.
You do a great Bastille Day celebration. I come every year.
Yeah.
I love it.
The way we do it, we build a coalition with our business partners and colleagues around the area. So we all get together, and we have local bands to come in and play the music. And then all of us together, we have tables and we serve food, drink, stuff. And it's of course free and open to the public, and everybody comes in. And we even get some artists that come in and showcase their wares. And it's a really it's the same feeling of in French, it's bonne franquette, like easygoing.
Yeah.
It's a good feeling of simply easygoing, have fun, you know, and just enjoy yourself.
Let's talk about your menu, Jacques, because that is really the centerpiece of why Café Degas has been such a great success. I told you I was going to tell you this, but your frites, your fries, oh my God. I don't think there's anybody in New Orleans that equals what you do here.
So this the fries, we use what we call the Belgian technique, which is to cook the fries ahead of time. So they're fried or sometimes blanched at for a very short time, so they even immediately get a crisp. They rather get a crisp on the outside, and the inside are already slightly cooked. And then when the customer order, they're finished up. They're going back to the oil bath, and then they're fully done and fully crisp. And so that gives it that really crispy, soft interior of the fries. That's what makes the French fries what it is.
Oh, they're so good.
And they're wonderful with mussels.
With your thin, mussels or your thin steak.
Yes.
Your steak free.
And the fries are made here. You know, you peel the potatoes. I mean, the full works. You know, we peel the potatoes, we cut the potatoes ourselves, and then they go into a water bath until they're ready to go.
Your cheese and your meat boards are the way we always start our meal here. And that changes. You bring in new cheeses and new meats.
That's Chef Laurent does that. He brings in new cheeses all the time. Depends on what's available. Also, just to turn things around a little bit occasionally. Our pâtés, by the way, are made in house. So we make our own pâtés, and we serve them with all the accoutrements. And then one of the things that we're able to get is called this fig mustard, which is in English we call it mostarda. So it's a hot jellied fig jam, if you will. That's really lovely.
That tends to disappear off the plate first on my plate.
Did you notice that too? Huh? It's the
That
first
just
thing
goes
to
away.
go.
I think is it the air that makes it dehydrate and all that?
Yes, I
it's
think
got to
so.
be it. It's got to be good. So, and oftentimes I make a whole dinner out of a board or two.
That's right.
Because
that's right, because we make combinations on it, and actually they're good, generous sizes.
They are.
Which we try to do that.
They really are. Do you? And then you have the rotating dishes. A lot of restaurants do that, but you add the the Gallic influence to it, using our ingredients, what you get from Louisiana.
So the idea behind it is, beside having just a classic French menu, there are things in Louisiana that are unique to Louisiana. I imagine, for example, the soft shell crabs or other things that we can get here that are difficult to get anywhere else. Crawfish, for example, and so forth. It allows our chef and our kitchen to use seasonal items and also to use their own creativity, so they don't have to be in a rut of always cooking the same thing. And so by having new specials and turning things over from time to time, we are able to bring some new ideas and keep it fresh. And I think it's part of the issue with a restaurant is no matter what, you always want to keep it fresh.
Let me talk about, we alluded to it a moment ago, your bar program. You got, for a small bar, you really do a lot of work here.
Yes.
Yeah, the drinks are so well crafted.
We have drinks that are signatures that we actually developed ourselves. I use the talent of my bartenders. You know, they're not just pouring drinks. I ask them also to come up with ideas, and we try them together. We test things out together, and so they come up with new ideas, and we play around and we find product. Recently, we found a vermouth that is totally different from what we're used to, the run of the mill, and we're thinking of using this for developing a new drink program. We use Lillet in some of our cocktails. We found absinthe roux recently, which is a absinthe anise-based vermouth. Actually, it's actually one of the very first kind of vermouth made, and we use that instead of regular vermouth in some of our cocktails. So we just by finding things out outside, we're able to bring really some interesting ideas behind the cocktail product. The wine program is, of course, it's simple, really. For get-go, we have wines that are either from France or from America. Now, occasionally we bring in an exception. For example, if we want a Malbec, I think the best Malbecs, they come from Argentina, so we have a Malbec from Argentina. But for the rest of it, it's either French or America. On the American side, usually I get wines from Oregon, Washington a little bit, and from Napa in
So
California.
the lighter styles is where you're living right now.
Yes.
With your food. That goes perfectly.
It goes well. We have quite a wine program by the glass. We have nearly 15 bottles of wine that are available by the glass.
Cabernet Franc?
We do, yes.
Good.
We have a Cabernet Franc.
That's my new passion right now.
That's
Cabernet
true,
Franc.
yeah.
I love it. I love it. Well, we're talking to Jacques Soulas with Café Degas. Jacques, keep up the great work. It's such fun to be here. A beautiful restaurant,
Thank
so
you.
welcoming, and I can't tell you how much I enjoy being here.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Tim.
Tim McNally, Appetite for Life. We're going to be right back after a break. We thank you for joining us this evening. If you would like to further enjoy past episodes, all of our broadcasts are online at WLAE.com, Appetite for Life. Have a most pleasant evening and never lose your appetite for life. We'll be back next week.
Appetite for Life is underwritten by the Sazerac Company, makers of fine spirits including Sazerac Rye Whiskey, Herb Saint, and Peychaud's Bitters. Sazerac, the one and only New Orleans original. More information can be found at sazerac.com. Additional support comes from Bourbon House, home of the redfish on the half shell and bourbon milk, located 1 block off Canal on Bourbon Street, serving premium Gulf oysters, raw or charbroiled. More information can be found at bourbonhouse.com.